What happens when cancel culture meets torture games? Your host asks that question, and the result is one hell of a twisted ride. What's up, everybody? I'm Keelan, and today I'm plugging in and going live to give you guys my review for Your Host. Directed by D.W. Medoff, Your Host follows four friends as they struggle to survive a sadistic game show. I first heard about this movie not too long ago from my friend Ken over on Sledgehammer Horror, and he had nothing but glowing things to say about this movie, and because of that, I was extremely excited to check it out for myself. And needless to say, this movie is awesome. We're quickly introduced to the four characters we're following throughout the movie. We have Anita, played by Ella Ray Smith, James, who's kind of the rich douchebag, played by Jamie Flatters, Matthew, the nice quote-unquote simp character, played by David Anglin, and then we have Melissa, the dog lover, played by Joelle Ray. The movie makes their dynamics and tension very apparent from the very beginning, and that's okay. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I think the on-the-nose personalities that they have were written intentionally for that reason, and so being able to kind of jump in and know these characters quickly and kind of get a good idea of who they are so that we can get to the meat and potatoes of the story, it's perfectly fine with me. And whether it was compassion, disdain, or something in between, each one made me feel exactly what they were supposed to. And once the setup's out the way and the characters wake up trapped in the game room, the shit hits the proverbial fan fast. Enters the host, played by none other than Jackie Earle Haley himself. And I really love his character design. He wears this orangish, bedazzled suit that looks like it came straight out of a game show. And then he pairs that with a mask very similar to Phantom of the Opera, kind of having that half mask look. And his personality definitely matches his outfit. Cheerful, theatrical, and completely deranged. He forces the group of characters to play a series of games, resulting in things like bodily harm, emotional trauma, and in some cases, even fatal consequences. This movie had a lot of elements and influences very similar to movies like Saw, Hostel, and Would You Rather, which are all movies that I really enjoy, so I kind of figured just off the bat that this movie was going to be right up my alley. So at first, the games start pretty small. We get somebody who gets a paper cut, somebody gets hit with a rock, and in the worst case, somebody does lose the tip of their finger. But after that, things quickly escalate into even worse things like a drill bit to the eardrum, a needle to the eye, things that really start to people up. And the mix of playful absurdity and genuine tension is handled so well, and Haley's performance accentuates that tone. So as the games continue on, each character is forced to confess their deepest, darkest secrets. One of them admits to knowingly selling dogs to somebody who uses them for dog fights. Another confesses to getting in an accident and killing a woman and then having it covered up. One took part in creating and distributing adult content online. And lastly, the other admitted to scamming people online for their money. And this moment is very reminiscent of Jigsaw, if you've ever seen that. There's pretty much a scene just like that where all the characters are forced to divulge their deepest, darkest secrets.
Hey, you got something you want to confess? Have at it. Come on.
And then, as I'll touch on here in just a moment, one of them is not telling the truth. So damn near a copycat scene from Jigsaw, but whatever. It works for this film, and I really enjoyed the movie regardless. So I'm not going to complain too much about that. But this section of the movie really stood out to me because it really starts having you change your perspective on these characters and almost starts to make you think that maybe they're not as innocent as you were originally encouraged to think, and that maybe in some form or fashion they even kind of deserve what's happening to them. Not that what's happening to them is correct, but you know, their shit stinks too. And it really starts to make that shift in your mind and look at them in a different way. So like I said, soon after that, it's revealed that one of the characters lied about their confession, leading to probably the most brutal sequence in the movie involving a hydraulic press. Yes, I said that right, a hydraulic press. I don't think I've ever seen a hydraulic press used in a horror film as a means to off one of the characters. So kudos to the writers for coming up with that idea. I thought that was a really cool and interesting idea. And I gotta say, the effects are disgustingly realistic. See, for me, the only real experience with a hydraulic press that I have is watching those brain rot videos on Instagram where they use a hydraulic press to crush different things, glass, slime, all that stuff. But I've only ever seen a hydraulic press that's flat. This hydraulic press that they use in YourHost has a spiked tip, and so they use it to crush this character's head in half, but at the same time, it's kind of like slowly splitting the character's head in half. And they show it all. And it looks awesome, but it also looks really gross and disgusting. And I think it's easily one of the most memorable kills of the entire year for me. So eventually, we do get to learn the host's real name and a little bit of his backstory. Barry Miller is a former game show host ruined by accusations of sexual misconduct from Anita herself. Turns out, her mother was seriously ill and needed life-saving surgery. And with the bad advice of her coworkers, Anita made a terrible choice that destroyed Barry's career, marriage, and family. And that revelation leads directly into the overarching theme of this movie, which I'll get into shortly. So after a failed escape attempt and one eaten tongue later, we get another standout sequence. A little game Barry likes to call Incision Decision. Essentially, 2 keys are hidden inside 2 characters' stomachs, and Anita has to cut them open to get them. It's another rough, teeth-gritting sequence that the practical effects team really showed out on. You can damn near feel the realism Anita was getting in them guts.
Pause.
But aside from that, I will say this scene also does bring out a little bit more of the humanity of the characters. And for a brief moment, you even start to sympathize with probably the worst of the 4 characters, despite everything they've done. And, you know, Anita does what she has to do, but in the end, it's revealed that the keys really don't matter because the doors are magnetically locked. And so Anita essentially killed her friend for no reason. And the whole game was pointless, basically just to make Anita suffer further. So as the final game begins, Barry reveals that only one person can leave and only one person can survive. But in an interesting and very humane turn of events, one of the characters decides to take themselves out of the picture, leaving Anita as the sole survivor, so she thinks. She's forced into one last game where she must pull a string tied to boxes, one of which holds her quote-unquote reward. She picks an empty one, attacks Barry, and tries to escape. But her shot caller stops that plan real quick, and Barry drags her back for the grand finale. Strapped to a chair, Anita is presented with a birthday cake, just like one from their past encounter. Barry tells her she has to smash her face into the cake before she can go, and just like I actually thought in the moment as well, she assumes there is some sort of spike or a knife in the cake, and you know, she proclaims that she's not stupid, and once she does that, it's going to stab her and kill her, which, again, it's exactly what I thought as soon as he told her to do it, and I would have said the same thing in her shoes. But, in another twist of events, Barry takes her face, smashes it into the cake, and to everyone's surprise, she's fine. There is no spike, no knife, no damage. Anita's sitting there in shock, covered in icing, and Barry congratulates her for being the sole survivor and tells her that she won his game. Then comes the real twist. The icing itself is toxic, and Anita's face, along with anything else that was touched by the icing, starts to melt away. It's a very excruciating and drawn out scene. Not overly gory or anything, but extremely effective. She goes blind, her skin is boiling up, melting off of her face, she's choking, she's coughing, and it's a very slow demise. Very, very agonizing and a very rough watch. From there, the film ends with a short scene showing Barry interrogating another accused man named Colin. A reminder that corruption, cover-ups, and hypocrisy are everywhere. What's important about this scene with Colin is he's a character mentioned very briefly earlier on in the movie, and he's another man who was accused of the same accusations that Barry was accused of, and you know, they mention how very quickly he was acquitted of those crimes and accusations, and there's some rumblings of hush money and payoffs going on. So basically, actual bad guy does bad thing and then pays his way out of it, whereas somebody like Barry, who to our knowledge as the viewer is accused of these things, but there's no real evidence, it's just like groupthink accusing him, knowing they're lying because they're trying to get something from him. And that really shines a light on Barry's true essence before, you know, his life was ruined and now he is the man who he is as the host. Yeah, it's just a fun wrinkle and juxtaposition from his character to someone who is actually a piece of shit. Which brings me to the theme of the film, as I had mentioned prior. The destruction that false allegations can bring and the complexities of things like the Me Too movement. Now, this is definitely a touchy subject, no pun intended. So I'm going to try to handle this part carefully and with grace. We all know that bad people exist, and sometimes they do terrible things. Sometimes they're caught, and they face consequences. And unfortunately, there's other times where they don't. And it's extremely crucial to listen to people when they speak up, because then that's how change happens. But the movie also points out how dangerous it is when we as a society are too quick to believe every word that somebody says, even in situations of harsh allegations against another person. The truth is, unfortunately, some people lie for a multitude of reasons, and those lies can result in the destruction of many people's lives. I felt that this movie was giving us a reminder that it's really important not to be so quick to jump to conclusions, and that serious accusations require patience, context, and evidence. We definitely live in a time period where quick judgment spreads faster than actual facts, and Your Host forces you to think about that a little bit. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that this in some way excuses Barry's actions. He's clearly a sick and deranged individual. I'm not denying that, but two things can be right at the same time, or two things can be true at the same time, rather. And this movie does show how false allegations and accusations can completely destroy and unravel a person's life. So, in conclusion, Your Host turned out to be a very nice surprise. Jackie Earle Haley's performance is 100% the cherry on top of the sundae. He's menacing, somewhat endearing, and most definitely deranged and chaotic. Between this, The Watchmen, and even the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, even though I know that movie gets a lot of shit, between those three films, I think he's proven time and time again that every role that he's in, he's bringing something unique to the table. His performance, paired with the practical effects and the very thought-provoking story, easily made Your Host crack my top 10 for 2025. Thank you all so much for watching Kill the Credits. What did you think of Your Host? Did it have you critically thinking afterwards the way that it did me? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss any of my new uploads. As always, be safe, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.